back, and thank you so much for watching Smart 24 TV. This is The Point, and my name is Anthony. I'm still with Miss Awori Ruth and Mr. Wira Michael, who is from GCIC, the Government Citizenship Interaction Center, and Miss Ruth, who is Executive Director of the Uganda Network for Young People Living with HIV and AIDS. And before we went into the break, the story of the boy child and girl child had actually come into the space, and Miss Ruth was actually defending the fact that girls still need more attention, girls need to be given special programs, which Mr. Michael probably doesn't want to agree with much at this point in time. But Miss Ruth, we were actually winding up on the point of the girl child and the boy child. Why the girl child still needs special attention and special care, especially when it comes to healthcare, reproductive health, and other things like education. We still need that 1.5. Why is it still important for us to push for this for the girl child?
Thank you, Anthony. So I'll start by merely saying that situations have not changed. I should declare. If you're born a girl child, you're still being born a girl child. Nothing has changed. That's why we still need the programs, because the vulnerabilities that we face start even from the time of birth, whereby you're just born a girl child. Sometimes I love to say that sometimes the birth rights of the boys are way more than those of the girls. Simple things like what's the inheritance, who is taking the inheritance, can you be a heir to your father or something like that. So supporting the girl child is still necessary, because the issues that are still facing young people, or the adolescent girls and young women, have not been subsidized, or they have not ceased to exist. Things like sexual exploitation and harassment. I was discussing during the break that while you're at campus and you're working for your points, even if I work for mine, I may still have to sleep with the lecturer to actually see those points on my ERP or my system or the portal, because they can exploit me easily than they do for the boy child. The other example that I was giving was that even in the education system, sometimes you find that some of the girls, when they're in their menstrual periods, some of them have to sit home. I went to school with one who had to be on drips for 3 days, all the period that she's on her periods. So while I'm away from school, the boy child is still continuing with the classes, and that's on a monthly basis. So as they continue to build their capacity, I'm struggling with my body, or my biology, like how my body works. The other thing that I was looking at is that even up to date, you'll find that there are some companies that still pay different wages for different genders, even when you're doing the same job. So when you look at the different aspects that are surrounding the girl child, even growing up in communities, an example of Karamoja, where some of the girls, once you hit your menstrual periods, you're no longer eligible to continue with school. The next step for you is marriage. That's why we still need to empower the girl child. While I get pregnant and drop out of school, the boy child who made me pregnant is still continuing with his education. Those are some of the reasons as to why we need to continue supporting the girl child. We're not saying that the boys and men should be left out, because at the end of the day, they are the perpetrators. Sorry to say. They are the reason as to why the girl child suffers.
Oh, really? No.
Like, even if we're talking about the new infections, girls are not infecting girls. It's men that are infecting girls. When you look at the teenage pregnancies, it's not girls impregnating themselves. It's the men impregnating the girls. Am I lying?
You are not lying, but
great.
So
infection. It's the men that are infecting the girls. But that's the reality. So I know that we also need to work with men, and I would really love to appreciate partners that are taking up the space to integrate to see to it that as we are empowering young girls, we are also looking at their male counterparts, the male partners in the communities, to have them on board as champions. For example, last year during the symposium that we've had to, the theme was around adolescent girls and boys. We are also looking at the processes, the co-processes that are ongoing right now. They're also including boys as priority groups. So there are baby steps, but we shall get there. And just to be clear with this, when we demand for empowerment of girls and young women, we are not saying that put the boy down and bring the girl up. We are saying that support the girl to be at the level to be able to compete favorably with their male counterparts. That's all that we're asking for, not the other way around.
Wow, interesting submission there. the perpetrators. That caught my eye. But Mrs. Ruth, as we proceed away from this discussion, we want you to suggest some ways government programs can be effected better. One of the challenges you mentioned was the thought that these are politically motivated programs that come to the interest of politicians and at a time of elections. How can this change? Should government restructure the programs and find a way to give them to come up with these programs within a term, or there could be actually better ways of implementation that do not portray political motives?
Thank you, Anthony. So first and foremost, as we are designing this program, the first and most important aspect is the involvement of the young people themselves. I know you will say that they are involved, but I'm giving an example of a whole network that is engaging a whole constituency of young people living with HIV. I would declare that we have never been involved in any of the designing of these programs, yet they're intended for people that we serve.
And that has been a complaint not only for the young people, but when I see ECIC here, I'm very excited because this is something that we have not seen actually before. Especially any policy level, be it for the young people, be it for the PWDs, you'll find people who don't have any disability discussing matters of people with disability. And this is what sometimes pieces of the public and they're like, okay, how can they discuss for us? How do they feel for us? Yeah, I think that's something I wanted to add to.
Yeah, so the first step is actually engaging the young people to know exactly what they want, because the programs need to be responsive to their needs, responsive to what actually the issue is at that particular time. And just like you said, maybe we also need to revisit on how we actually time our programs, because that has been a very major barrier. The other aspect is monitoring this program to see to it that they're actually effective. Because at some point we have just discussed that there is a lot of corruption. Some of these monies don't go to the rightful beneficiaries. You find that people who are benefiting from youth programs are people of 40, 50 and above, or even people who are just linking their relatives and friends because they are in positions of power. So how do you monitor these programs to see to it that they actually serve the actual community of young people that they are intended to serve? And the other thing is that we need to continuously, even after the rollout of the program, we need to continuously raise awareness about it first and foremost. I'm very happy for what you're doing in Jinja and the whole of the Eastern region, but I think we need to do more. Bring it down to the community itself. What if I do not have a radio? Can you be able to give me some paper material that I can actually use, megaphones that are in the communities? Let's make use of the different systems that are available, the different youth groups that are available, that are already established, to be able to popularize these programs, to be able to entice young people to be able to participate in these programs. Trust me, if you had worked with organizations like UNIPA, like RAHO, like the Sexual Productive Health and Rights Alliance, to market these kind of models, because we reach out to multitudes of young people in the country, we would have been able to achieve bigger numbers, to have many young people participate and benefit from the programs. And the other thing that we need to look at is actually, who are we working with at the community? I understand that the Community Development Office is the one that is rightfully placed to plan and engage with all community engagements. But how are we engaging even the other sectors? For example, if you're working with people living with HIV, how are you working with the SACs, the sub-county aid committees, the district aid committees, the parish? They go up to the village level, and this would be the first entry point for like people living with HIV. I believe other constituencies could be having the same. And then lastly, we need to empower the young people, continue coaching them even after we've given them the money. Because managing a business or executing a talent that you showed or an innovation that you had may call for continuous mentorship. That's why we called for youth adult partnership, because we know that even if we know what we want, we cannot coexist. We cannot exist in solitude. Yeah, we need to work with people who have been there. Sometimes guidance is key, but you need to listen to us, support us along the way, so that we can benefit from the programs, give you feedback, timely feedback where need arises, and guide on how we can better the different programs that are available to speak to the current needs of the young people.
Oh, wonderful insights, wonderful insights. Thank you so much. Ms. Wera, if you would want to respond to some of her concerns, especially when it comes to stakeholder engagement, how far has government gone? I know, yes, ECIC is trying its best to bridge the gap, but then when it comes to government policies, government programs, how far reaching are they to these stakeholders within this, the public, within these non-government organizations, to see that they involve them in making policies and pushing these programs?
You know, government. Now we have a ministry, a minister of youth, and we have a minister for youth affairs. And basically, the minister for youth affairs is supposed to be presenting all issues that are in line with the youth to cabinet, and that is her role. And she's supposed to be working with the National Youth Council. The National Youth Council has representation. It has representation, and in fact, the National Youth Council still has a representation for women. It has no representation for men, but it has a representation for women affairs.
Okay.
So, at least the National Youth Council is supposed to be putting together all the issues of the youth and presenting them to the minister, and the minister is supposed to be presenting all these issues to cabinet through the Ministry of Gender, and that is their role. We even have a day, International Youth Day. Sometimes when we go for these days, you find them presenting a lot of stuff, very many papers, and many papers of achievements. So let me hope whatever they always present is always true, because when we are here and then someone says that they are not always involved, no one even approaches them to ask them, what can we do here? We are coming up with these programs, these projects, what can we do? You know, involvement of stakeholders is something that is very good, because you can really understand what the real local person wants. Because as a National Youth Council, you will be there in your offices, you have representatives maybe from schools, WUNSA, that is WUNSA, but there is this local person who is down here. So government itself has tried to come up with all these platforms for youth leadership, from the grassroots to national, basically to be sure that these people are supposed to be presenting their issues to cabinet. So whatever happens down there and youth feel like they're not represented, they should always ask the National Youth Council or their leaders in schools like WUNSA, because these are bodies that weigh a lot under the Ministry of Gender. So they must be presenting all these issues to the ministry. In fact, it should even be the National Youth Council to demand for whatever the youth want, especially when we talk about the sustainable development goals, which were like mainly poverty, fighting poverty, zero hunger, those very many sustainable development goals. I think it is the youth councils that are supposed to be doing that. Then when it comes to the issue of like implementation of these initiatives, we have a lot of corruption which we are trying to fight. Of course, as you said, these people, there are people 40 who receive money for the youth, and that is true. That is very true. I have engaged a number of them. I have received complaints whenever I'm on radio and TV. I always hear people complain, this has happened here, this has happened here. But we have tried to engage them using the anti-corruption unit. We are trying to arrest all those people who are misbehaving, because if you were that, how can you really get money of someone who is very young? And these are sometimes leaders. You find that the RDC of this area has received the money of the other village. So which is not right. It is very bad, and the president really doesn't like such, because these projects are being brought for the youth, and the beneficiaries should still be the youth, not anyone else. So I think, as I had said earlier, government should just come up with more programs, especially for these groups, special programs. Government should come up with special projects and programs for people like those that have HIV. Those can help. If people with HIV have their project somewhere, we can know they are here and they are not complaining. This is their project and they are benefiting from it. So I think government should do more when it comes to coming up with projects for these vulnerable groups.
Yeah. Talking about the National Youth Council, we want to know more about the role, the distinctive role of National Youth Council, because there seems to be a duplication of roles sometimes, and so many cooks spoil the broth. That's the saying we used to have in primary. The National Youth Council, what special role does it play when it comes to matters of the youth? Because we have the National Youth Council, we have other platforms where the youth can actually be able to engage, like you mentioned, the innovation hubs, industrialization hubs. Where's the distinction in the roles of all these bodies?
I will not speak on their behalf, but of course one day I'll force them to come and explain to you their role. Yes. But all I know is that the National Youth Council is supposed to be the parliament for the youth. It should be discussing issues, presenting reports to government about youth issues. This National Council should be going down to the youth down in their villages and engage them in community halls, engage with the leadership, because we have from the grassroots, we have leaders, youth councillors, representatives of youth. All these are supposed to be presenting whatever their reports to the National Youth Council. So the National Youth Council is supposed to sit as the parliament for the youth and speak on behalf of all the youth. So that's why I say that whatever is not going right, people should blame the National Youth Council because it is the parliament for the youth. So if the youth don't know that they have a parliament, the National Youth Council is just there with even a representative of the women.
I think as much as we should blame the National Youth Council, it's also a question of who is supposed to be supervising the National Youth Council, because it's an issue of, have you monitored to see that the council is actually doing the work that it's meant to do? That's when we're assessing the different structures that we have put in place to see whether they're effective or what needs to be done to make them more effective.
Yeah, because the National Youth Council is being supervised by the Minister of Gender, and we have a Minister for Youth. So the Minister for Youth is supposed to be working directly with the National Youth Council, because whatever the Minister for Youth presents to Cabinet must be from the National Youth Council. He has to, he or she gets the feed from the National Youth Council, and that's what he's supposed to be presenting. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. We're taking our last break, and we return with the wind up of our discussion here on the youth participation in the economy and sustainable development. And in this year's theme for the Women's Day, yes, we are celebrating women, Mr. Michael here. And the theme was digital. That is the participation of women in innovation and technology. So we're going to broaden it a little bit and get it to the youth. How can the youth also embrace technology and be able to move towards sustainable development? Stay with us. We are returning shortly.